Welcome to Story Minutes. I'll be reading excerpts from my short story, Memoir of an Overseas Contractor. There are links below to my publication, Hearts Without Sleeves, where you can read the story in its entirety, as well as a literary magazine where you can find the story. I've also included a synopsis for you. Let's begin, shall we? Living and working on an isolated volcanic atoll in the Pacific for 2 years made me question logical lifelong beliefs and everything or anyone I've ever known. What is for certain is I've got to get off this island and return home quickly. I stood at the end of the long runway, which was built as an emergency landing strip for the space shuttle. I was relieved to see the approach lights of the Cessna, which would take me off this island for the hour-long flight to the Marshall Islands Airport, where I would catch a flight to Guam, then board a nonstop flight to LAX. The Cessna 208 smoothly touched down and taxied toward me. I'm happy to see the pilot is Kai, a very capable pilot. And more importantly, he understands the unpredictable weather conditions. Kai is an employee of our company and responsible for mail and supply deliveries to and from the island. He isn't instrument rated, so he flies by the seat of his pants in bad weather. Jade was determined to get off the island and would stop at nothing to board the plane. I jumped in and screamed, "Take off, Kai!" "Hey, man, that chick looks crazy. I think she'll drive the Jeep right into the plane if I attempt to take off." Kai brought the plane to a stop, keeping the engine roaring. Kai reached out, grabbed her hand, and pulled her into the cockpit. Jade was my friend and lover, but her past was murky. It didn't make sense she'd be the only female crew member on the desolate island, working amongst a rough crew of hardened, retired sailors. Mom met a man named Drake and convinced Drake to divorce his wife and marry Mom. I was good with numbers, and my engineering courses weren't challenging for me. Drake suggested, "Go off and make some real money. By the time your classmates graduate, you'll have banked enough money to buy an engineering firm." Drake hired me as an apprentice crew member. I quit school. I flew for almost 24 hours, eventually landing on a volcanic atoll somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Communication with the mainland was via satellite internet and a single satellite phone used sparingly. My stepfather's company serviced and repaired AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles. The oil and gas industry uses them to map the seafloor before drilling or laying pipes and for inspecting underwater oil rig platforms. They're powered by rechargeable batteries, which we performed on the island. They look like torpedoes or cruise missiles. They operate for about 16 hours on pre-programmed missions, which take them as far away as the west coast of the United States, Hawaii, Alaska, where they're met by our company personnel, serviced and sent back out to sea. Working on the island was difficult. It was flat, hot, and humid. The wind was so strong, it felt like it would blow you off the island. Our downtime was brutal because of lack of diversions. There was no cell phone reception on the island, and the only satellite phone was used for emergency purposes only. Like Drake promised, I was making more money than any engineer or the president of any engineering company, but there was nowhere to spend any of the money on the island. All of my living necessities were provided by the company. I never considered the moral implications of my work. I heard Mom's terrible coughing and spitting on the emailed audio tape she sent me. It sounded bad. Your mama is very sick with lung cancer, honey. I'm being admitted to the hospital. Your stepfather died from a stroke. He told me on his deathbed you were bequeathed ownership of the company. I received a strange phone call from a man who was contesting the ownership of the company. He's in Los Angeles. The bastard's son was my equivalent on the mainland. Drake pitted us against each other. Aside from being my last opportunity to be with my mother before she died, I had to get back home and defend my interest in the business. Kai was a company man and was loyal to Drake for giving him a job and flying lessons. He held up a pistol and pointed it at Jade, saying, "Boss, I can take her out now and throw her corpse from the plane." Jade reached for her Glock inside her duffel bag. I grabbed her hand, preventing her from removing the gun. The last thing we needed was a shootout in a small plane during a storm with nowhere to land. Lightning struck the plane. The engine stalled and it took a sharp dive. Again, you can find the complete story at the links below. If you enjoy dramatic stories where there's risk versus reward and moral hazard, that's a favorite genre of mine, and you certainly will find it in this story, as well as the metaphysical. If you've ever been in a desolate place with nobody around, no communications, it starts to play with your mind. And being out in the middle of the Pacific with just the beautiful stars, no diversions, nowhere to go, no ability to get off the island, your mind will start to play tricks with you, and you'll find it in this story. Here's some other titles of similar storylines I think you'll find interesting. You can find them under the internet. Just type the title in or go to my LinkedIn profile. They're all there with links to the publications. And most, if not all, are also within my book, Hearts Without Sleeves. There's a link below. One is called My Coffee Date with Death, Troubles in Tijuana, Guzzled, spelled Guzzled, Box Office Gross, Gross, Trios, Trios, and 5 Entrances. Thank you for joining me for this installment of Story Minutes. Until I see you next time, I hope your personal story is a bestseller. Goodbye.